You are watching Wake Up to Your Life here on WCNC Plus. Thank you so much for joining. I'm your host, Colleen Odegaard. Today we're talking about this. See if you can relate to this at all. Does your life look pretty good on paper? You've got a decent job, maybe you're successful, you've got a family, you've got a home, you've got all the things, the traditional makings for what seems like should be a happy life. Yet somehow you still feel unfulfilled. You feel like something is missing. You might be even a little down in the dumps. You'd like to be happier. My guest today knows all about that. He is a cardiologist and a mindfulness teacher. This is Dr. Jonathan Fisher. He is also the author of Just One Heart, a cardiologist's guide to healing, health, and happiness. Dr. Fisher, thank you so much for being here today.
Colleen, it's great to be with you again.
I love talking with you because I find you so interesting. You are a cardiologist, and you also study meditation and teach it as well. How did that come to be for you? How did you marry the two?
I needed help, is how it came to be. Like so many people who discover these kind of woo-woo, touchy-feely practices, I trained at the best institutions in the country. I worked my butt off for over a decade, and no one taught me how to take care of myself. And so I found myself really stressed out. I'm supposed to be caring for thousands of patients every year, showing up at my best, listening for hours on end to other people's challenges. Who was taking care of me? So someone recommended that I read some books on positive psychology, the science of happiness. I went deep into that hole, and it was recommended to do this thing called mindfulness, and I took it really seriously. And so I started meditating on my own. Then I went on half-day retreats, full-day retreats, a full week of silence at a Zen monastery, and I said, this stuff really works.
And then you started incorporating that into your colleagues, using that with your colleagues, using that with patients. That's why you're such the perfect person to talk to about this. So let me ask you this. Why do you think so many people feel so unfulfilled when they have what looks to be all the ingredients for a so-called happy life?
People don't come into my cardiology office talking about, my life isn't fulfilling. But after treating people for about a decade with the traditional technique, we use medications and tests, I noticed that it still wasn't getting underneath what was driving the high blood pressure, the heart palpitations, some of the chest pain symptoms. So I started asking questions, and there was a common pattern that was emerging. Whenever there was something physical going on with the body, there was always something with the emotions, whether it was heavy emotions like grief, sadness that hadn't been processed, or if it was just a social disconnection. I would start asking my patients, and I found out a lot of them were lonely. They were socially isolated. And then underneath it all, there was this feeling like, I don't know what the purpose of my life is. I'm not sure where I should be going. A lot of this was driving physical disease. So I became very curious about how we think about the heart in a really broad sense, so we don't try to put a Band-Aid on a physical problem. We look at all the other elements there.
So what did you find, and what does the research bear out when it comes to that? I mean, that these feelings of anger, resentment, bitterness, loneliness, depression, how they are affecting our physical health.
The research is incredibly powerful. And for people who aren't aware of this and who are on the highway and getting angry at somebody and doing the road rage, I like to let them know this is something that can actually affect your physical health. You're not going to live as long unless you can get this under control. And there's lots of ways to do that. What I found is that the science is pretty new, just in the last 30 or 40 years. It started to show up initially around grief and shock. So people who got sudden news that a family member died, it was discovered that if you lose a loved one or a spouse, within 24 hours, your chance of dying of a heart attack goes up significantly. So there's that piece. There's also another piece called the broken heart syndrome, which sounds like a metaphor. It's real. If you experience profound grief or loss or shock, there's a chance that your heart will physically suffer the signs of a heart attack and start to become weak, putting you in the hospital. I've seen lots of patients in that situation. So that's where the science began. What I became interested in, because I tried to dig myself from my own stress, my own anxiety, I didn't want my whole life and career to be about trying to run away from something. I said, well, what am I going for? And I started asking the question, how do I get more happiness, more joy, more fulfillment for myself and for my patients? And then I saw this whole other field of science, which is just as those negative emotions can break the heart, you can actually strengthen your heart's health by savoring and looking for and cultivating positive emotions like social connection, like gratitude, optimism, joy, laughter, you name it, there's dozens of them.
Now we're talking. That's the sweet spot. So how do we, Dr. Fisher, cultivate more of these kinds of so-called positive emotions? How do we cultivate more joy and create that life that you mentioned, that you're going towards something, you're not just kind of trying to get through the day?
I love how you use the word so-called positive emotions, and that's something that's really important. I discuss this in my book. There's this thing called toxic positivity, where you know the person when you meet them. They're always smiling, and everything has to be positive all the time, and you just have a feeling, can we get real for a second? Life can be really hard. What am I supposed to do with those hard emotions? So when I use the words positive emotions, negative emotions, it's not to say they're good or bad. Emotions are simply information. The first step in getting more positive in our life is learning how to work with the challenging ones, which has to do with not doing our traditional, which is, I feel crummy, so I'm going to run away from my feelings. I'm going to bury myself in alcohol, in scrolling, in anger, whatever habits we have. So the first step to getting more of the good stuff is learning how to have compassion for ourselves when the hard stuff happens and accepting that that's part of life. And then, and I'd love to talk about this, then we can go into, well, how do we look for the good stuff? How do we recognize it? How do we stop what we're doing and let it soak in when it's happening?
Please keep going. Say more. I love this stuff.
It's so easy with how busy the world is right now. We've got 1,000,001 things on our to-do list. We're always got things on our mind. Oh, did I do this right? And what about tomorrow? What did this person think of me? Once we can learn to quiet our mind from all of that noise, we can do the fun work, which is, what do I want more of in my life? Most people that I know, whether it's working with doctors who are stressed out or nurses, I just got off the phone, coaching somebody, executives, it's pretty much the same stuff. People want more joy, they want more fulfillment, they want more social connection. So how do we do that? First thing is, say what you want. A lot of people don't even think about, I'm so busy running away from burnout and stress in this job that I don't like right now. I can't even describe what it is I want in my life. So that's the first step, is to say, I'm going for more joy. Okay, awesome. What does that look like? Where does your joy come from? And then once you get clear on that, it's much easier to see something that you're going for. Now here's the second step, really important. It's called savoring. Now, you know when you're having that dessert, for me it's chocolate cake, and you taste it and you're like, oh, it's so good. And you just stop and you feel it in your whole body. How often do we go through our whole lives and we miss all these moments of savoring? So part of the work that we have to do is recognize when we're in that moment of connection and just let the whole world fade away and just be there and let you feel it in your bones. That's what it's about.
Yeah, camp out there, right? When something that you're enjoying is happening.
Yeah.
Camp out there for a minute. And when you say feel it in your bones, what I do, because I also have a meditation practice and a mindfulness practice, I try to really, feel my butt in the seat, really be aware of how I'm feeling in my body when I'm having this experience with my fiance. We're having a great time of connection. I think, God, this is just so wonderful. And I kind of just want to hover over that for a while, keep my mouse over that for a while, I want to hover there and try to get in touch with how it physically feels and shows up in my body. That kind of helps me to stay in the moment a little bit longer, I think.
It's so true. And the first thing that comes up when you talk about that is I can hear people saying, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time to get into my body. I'm so busy. What I have found, and the science has shown this to be true, is that when you think you don't have enough time to slow down and to practice a little mindfulness, you actually can change time itself. When you start to feel into your body, you can slow down the experience of time, just like Albert Einstein talked about. And there's this experience that I had when I started practicing mindfulness. It was almost like the whole world slowed down. Yeah. And I could start to smell the flowers a little bit more. Food started tasting better. I started appreciating artwork a little bit more. Same amount of time, but I experienced it differently.
Yes, because of the work you were doing on the inside. Oh, this is the good stuff. Oh, I just love talking with you, Dr. Fisher. We're going to take a quick break, more on how to be just a little bit happier, how to be a little bit more mindful each day when we come back. You're listening to Wake Up to Your Life. Hope you got to take a moment to savor during that commercial break. Dr. Fisher, we were just talking about savoring. It helps to generate more of those feelings of joy and gratitude. Other suggestions for people who might not see the good stuff quite so easily, if they're having a hard time identifying what's great right now?
Absolutely. It's important to name something that's in the room for all of us, which is a natural tendency to focus on negative things. It's so easy. There's this thing called the negativity bias, and people are always obsessed with, oh, this person did this thing to me, you'll never believe who cut me off. And it's because we are wired to protect ourselves from dangerous things. The problem is that this wiring that we inherited from hundreds of thousands of years ago, it doesn't really serve us when somebody sends us a little email that we could just let go, but instead we obsess over it. So recognize that if you're focused on negative things, there's nothing wrong with you, but it's going to take a little extra work if you want to level the playing field and get more of the good stuff in. It takes extra effort. So that's the first thing that I would say to most people. There's nothing wrong with you if you're focusing on the negative. Are you ready to do the work? And so the next piece is to decide what it is you're going for. So what are the emotions we can look for? There are what I would call the heart waker emotions. Why do I call them the heart wakers instead of just feel good? Because there's science for each one of these that if you practice them, you don't just feel better. People don't just like you more. You're not just a better leader in your office or your team. Your heart benefits, and you don't have to go to the heart doctor as much. And so getting into these, and I discuss all of these in detail and all the science and how to develop them all, gratitude is probably the most powerful one. Why are we unhappy in our lives? Because we're missing all the stuff that we already have. We're taking it for granted and we're focusing on the negative. So the simple practice every day or a couple times a week, just get out of bed, write down 3 things that you're happy for, you're grateful for. Maybe you got unexpectedly, and just write them down and why they're special for you. I would say that would be the number one thing. If you don't have a gratitude practice of one kind or another, start today. Science shows that if you do that for a couple of months, and then I check back on you after another 6 months, you're still feeling better, even if you stop doing it.
It's crazy how this stuff really does work. I also like to, when I'm doing a gratitude practice or writing something down, get very specific about what it is. It's easy to say like, oh, my friends, my family, and my health, right? We say it almost flippantly, throw away. Really get into it and think about what is it that you are grateful for. Be very specific. And I think this is too where people lean in. If they think that what we're talking about is woo-woo, when you hear what Dr. Fisher says about the science behind it, how this does make you healthier and has beneficial effects on your heart, that's where people can get on board with doing this kind of work.
Yeah, this is for every person who's listening, whether you have a heart condition or not, there are benefits for the heart. This also helps people who already have heart disease. There have been studies showing that if you have had congestive heart failure, you've been in the hospital, the doctors, and I'm one of them, giving you all the best medications, those are going to help. You know what's going to take you to the next level? Developing some gratitude and developing a little bit of optimism and strengthening your social connections. You're less likely to be readmitted to the hospital if you do that psychosocial work in addition to taking your medications.
Do you think these are factory settings in each one of us, or can we strengthen our ability to hone these skills, to learn to be more grateful? Some people say, I'm just not that kind of a person.
The answer is yes and yes. So we all have, I love how you put that, factory settings. Yeah, we have these personality traits. Psychologists have been debating this for a while. Some of us are a little more open, a little bit, others are more closed, some are more extroverted versus introverted. Yeah, we kind of come out that way. Then we've got our parents and our upbringing, which influences that. But I would say there's a good 10, 20% or more of our personality that we have total control over. If we want to stop being someone who complains all the time or feels like a victim all the time, we can do that. It's going to take work. And that's really the most empowering part of this whole thing. You want to feel a little different in your life, you can choose to show up differently yourself, but you have to make that choice yourself when you get out of bed in the morning.
Can you talk about how our relationships affect our health, whether it's negatively or positively? I mean, I always think that we're only as happy as like the strength of our closest relationships, right? If your close relationships are in turmoil, you're probably not feeling really great.
Yeah. The American way, the traditional way, is I'm going to go it alone, I'm going to tough it out. If you need help, if you have to rely on friends, there must be something wrong with you. You just can't handle it. And so I know so many people who become successful in business, they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, they've got it all, they're all alone. And then they come to me wondering why their blood pressure is spiking, why they're having chest pain, why they've got blockages in the arteries of their heart. There are numerous lines of evidence over the last 100 years, hard evidence showing that the number one predictor of how long you'll live and how healthy you'll be is the quality of your social relationships. There's something called the Harvard study on human happiness, which also looked at health. It's over 100 years. Of all the factors, your social connections are number one. Dr. Dean Ornish, who showed in the 70s and 80s you can not only prevent heart disease, but you can reverse some buildup. One of the factors that he implemented was social connection. And it goes on and on and on.
It's really remarkable, isn't it? I mean, and for people who are in that work mode and they're thinking, oh, I've just got to earn and work and prove myself and get caught up in the busyness and the hamster wheel of life, it's easy to put some of those social relationships on the back burner and think, oh, yeah, we were supposed to have dinner. I couldn't make it. We'll do it some other time. But really, it sounds to me like these need to be priorities in our lives.
Absolutely. And there's another piece here I think it's worth highlighting. What's the first thing that you tend to sacrifice that I sacrifice when we're stressed out? It's the social connection. It's just a very natural thing that when we experience the whole world feeling busy, we kind of contract into ourselves. That takes effort to say, you know, I'm not going to go and hang out in my bed and eat that chocolate ice cream for the next hour or two and scroll. I am going to text a friend, see if I can get out of the house, make that social contact. That goes a long way. And there's one other piece. There's so much conflict in our world right now. There's so much stress in our society. There's all these divisions. That's taking its toll on our hearts as well. That incivility. The good news is that it doesn't take world peace in order for us to have healthier hearts. Just by going to the supermarket and saying hi to the person at the checkout or a random stranger, there's evidence that shows those little things go a long way as well.
Yeah, those little micro interactions, correct, that we have with people throughout the day, whether it's at the grocery store, with the barista at the coffee shop, when you're picking up your dry cleaning. If you look another person in the eye, you ask how their day was, they ask you back and you give them a smile, that adds up to something.
Yeah. As you're saying that, then the question is, well, how's that possible? What does that even do? What happens, and this is where I love to kind of nerd out on it, is that just by looking in another person's eyes, there's a change that happens inside of our bodies. Our chemical levels are shifting. When we feel that human connection, there's something very rudimentary, very primal, and even tribal inside of us that tells us, in this moment, I'm not in danger right now. I'm safe with this person who's giving me a look of kindness. So my oxytocin level in my blood goes up, released from the brain. That can lower my blood pressure, which, guess what, is good for your heart. At the same time, there's other chemicals. Serotonin levels go up just when you see someone smile, and that makes you feel a little bit better. So it's not just I feel good because I see someone smiling. There are changes in your mind, in the chemicals in your body, and in your heart itself in those first few moments.
This is why I bring in the big dogs to prove that the stuff that I'm saying and have been saying for so long, it's not just because I think so or I notice it. It's true, and you just put it so beautifully. So I thank you for your expertise and the credibility you bring to Wake Up to Your Life, Dr. Fisher.
Well, I wish I didn't have to prove it to you and prove it to me and prove it to myself. But you know what? There's so many skeptics out there, especially in the medical community, where people say, you know, Dr. Fisher, if you want to do that, you could go become a psychiatrist. I said, well, why? Why is it either or? Why can't I bring the heart and the mind together so that we all can benefit instead of having, to just brush it off? So I love going over the science of it because it helps people believe in it a little more.
Well, that's why I'm so fascinated by you, that you are a cardiologist and you teach this as well. I just think it's incredible. We'll take another break and come back with some of your final thoughts, Dr. Fisher. Again, you're listening to Wake Up to Your Life. All right, Dr. Fisher, in our remaining 5 minutes, can we talk a little bit about what it means to you to take care of the whole heart, the physical, emotional, social, and spiritual, all the stuff that we've been talking about?
I grew up in a house where the brain was everything. My parents worshipped Albert Einstein. It was impressed upon me that just study really hard, go to the best schools, achieve lots of things. There wasn't a lot of focus on the heart itself and on emotions or what to do with them or their role. And I ended up paying the price for that. I didn't know about this anxiety, this depression that was rising, and I don't want people to make that same mistake. And I see it happening again and again and again. So when I think about living with a whole heart, yes, it's having a sharp mind and it's pursuing things that make us feel fulfilled. But it's recognizing that our emotional life is not something you can just brush aside and do like so many people do when they're stressed. Oh, I'll put that in a compartment. I'll deal with those hard feelings later. Ends up people don't come back to them. I also don't want people to ignore that social dimension that we're talking about. That's often the first thing to go, because it's 10, 20, 30 years later that about 20% of people don't have a single family connection that trusts them, that they can talk to, and that makes this whole isolation epidemic worse. So I want people to invest in the social dimension of the heart. So the emotional dimension, start honoring those emotions that have been calling out to you, that have been whispering. The social dimension, I want people to really take stock in your investments, not the Wall Street investments, but your social investments. What's your social capital like? And what does that look like? And then I think beneath it all, some people call it the spiritual dimension of the heart. I like to think about it as a sense of purpose and meaning in your life. You know, when that comes into question, everything else falls apart. So I'm not saying that your purpose is automatically clear. A lot of people still don't know what it is. You don't have to. You can test it out. Make up a purpose, try it out, see if it's right, and recognize that once you find your purpose, the world is going to change and your purpose might change too. So I would invite people to think about the heart not just as this ticker in the chest that kind of beats. Recognize that all of these dimensions have a direct impact on all of the other, and the fast path to happiness is looking at all four: the physical, the emotional, the social, and the spiritual, each and every day.
You talk about purpose. I'm a person who has really struggled with purpose. It was after, I'm an empty nester now. My kids are out of college and doing their lives. And I thought, what am I doing? And for a while, I left my television career, came back to it, but still struggling with purpose. And I decided to do kind of what you're saying, just make it smaller and experiment with it, that it doesn't have to be so grandiose, that it doesn't have to be this big thing. And I'm going to tell you this little thing that I did. It might sound so stupid to you, but this would helps me get through certain days when I'm feeling, what's the point of all this? When I make a cup of coffee at work, I always refill the Keurig machine to the top with the water. I always refill it. Even if I've just made one cup and it's just down a little bit, I always refill it to the top, because I think I want to leave things better than I found them, or make things better for other people around me. That is a purpose that I have adopted. So I do that one little thing, and I know it sounds so goofy, but that act of and the ritual of doing that, it kind of brings me back to, oh yes, I do have agency. I can make choices to be a better human and to spread a little bit of kindness, even if no one knows I'm doing it, right? Yeah. It just, but don't you think little things like that can help? If this purpose thing feels so behemoth and humongous, and where do I even begin? I think doing little things and experimenting with it can help.
Absolutely. Yeah, we often set up obstacles to ourselves by making these impossible goals. And instead of doing that, just focus on each day. What's one small thing I can do today? What's one intention I can have? And not about, what can I achieve, but how can I show up? So for me, I like life to be something that I can win at, no matter what's happening outside. And the only thing I can really control is, how do I show up after I get out of bed in the morning with my wife, with my kids, with you, with everybody that I meet? If I can take a little control over that, maybe bring a little bit more heart into these interactions, that's a small win, but that's a really big win.
Oh, that's so good. I'm going to steal that one. Bring some more heart into all these interactions. I like that. I'm stealing that from you.
Go for it. You got
Dr. Fisher. You are the best. It's just still not enough time. Again, he is the author of this book right here, Just One Heart, a cardiologist's guide to healing, health, and happiness. You can get this wherever books are sold. I'll put his website up here on the screen for you. But Dr. Fisher, you are phenomenal. Thank you so much for this time. I really appreciate it.
What a joy. Thank you so much, Colleen.